Life can go in circles. You can end up stuck in a loop, and you don't even know it until it's too late. I know. It sounds dramatic. My name's Jack Turner, and for a long time I thought I was just another washed-up cab driver, rolling through the streets, with nothing to show for it but gambling debts and bad decisions. I still remember the night it all went to hell. I was pissed off, frustrated, sitting behind the wheel, thinking about how I'd thrown my life away. Another night shift, another night of driving people around like I gave a damn. But the truth was I didn't. I just kept driving because, well, what else was I going to do? That's when she got in, Emily Donovan. She looked scared, like something was about to jump out at her. She clutched her purse tight, like it was her last lifeline, double-checking the locks as soon as she got in the car. I shook my head, muttering under my breath. Kids these days, scared of their own damn shadows. I wasn't interested in her problems, but I made small talk anyway. That's what you do when you're driving. Keep the conversation going. She said she was new to the city, trying to get her bearings, but something didn't sit right. She couldn't hold eye contact, like she had something to hide. People like her are just as lost as me, pretending they had it together when they were falling apart. When she gave me her address, I felt that gut feeling, like something was off. That neighborhood she mentioned wasn't right. So I made a wrong turn on purpose, just to see if she'd catch on. Call it curiosity, call it boredom, but I did it. She didn't say a word, not a damn thing. And I'll tell you, the silence weighed heavier than I expected. The streetlights barely flickered as we drove through the empty streets. My mind drifted back to the bets I lost earlier that day, the way money slipped through my fingers and how my life just kept spiraling out of control. I dropped her off, barely said goodbye, and that was supposed to be the end of it. But then the radio crackled, and I got a call from Mr. Larkin. The guy was a regular, silent, creepy, never said where he wanted to go, just sat there staring out the window like a statue. But a fair's a fair, and I needed the money, so I picked him up. Larkin got in, just like always, not a word. I drove around, waiting for directions that never came. I couldn't shake the feeling something was wrong, but I kept driving, hoping he'd say something. And then I realized something. I was driving in circles. Every damn turn brought me back to the same intersection. My hands gripped the wheel tighter as Larkin finally muttered, "Keep going." That was it. No explanation, just those two words. And that's when my phone rang. Emily, the same girl I'd dropped off earlier, her voice shaking on the other end. "You need to get out. Now." What the hell? I slammed on the brakes, my heart racing, and whipped around to confront Larkin. But guess what? The back seat was empty, gone, vanished. I pulled over, trying to catch my breath, wondering if I was losing my mind. The seat was cold where Larkin had been sitting, but there wasn't a trace of him. I started second-guessing myself. Shadows flickered in the corners of my eyes, but every time I turned to look, there was nothing. Just the same empty streets, too dark, too quiet. And no matter where I turned, I kept ending up back at that same intersection, like the city itself was trapping me. Then, Emily called again, begging me to meet her where I'd dropped her off. Against every instinct, I went back. The place looked different now, abandoned like it had been that way for years. Not the fresh city block I'd seen earlier. I got out of the car, scanning the area, and there she was. Pale, terrified, standing there like she'd seen a ghost. And then she said it, whispered it like it was the hardest thing for her to admit. "None of this is real. You're not real." I froze, my brain trying to wrap around those words, but they didn't make sense. I'm not real? What the hell was that supposed to mean? The radio crackled to life again, and Larkin's voice cut through, cold as ice. "You never should have taken that wrong turn." I jumped back into the cab, my heart pounding out of my chest. The backseat wasn't empty anymore. Larkin was there, grinning at me through the shadows. "You've been driving dead souls for years, Jack. Every wrong turn brought you here." I was too stunned to speak. It hit me all at once like a sledgehammer to the head. The memories, the crash, the night I died. I'd been drunk, desperate, running from my debts, from my life, and I crashed. I died. Larkin's voice echoed in my head. You never left that night, Jack. You've been driving in circles ever since. Now you can't escape. I tried. God. I tried. I hit the gas, driving like a maniac, taking every shortcut, every back road, but it was useless. No matter what, I kept ending up at that same intersection like I was stuck in a glitch, the same moments repeating over and over, small details changing, but the nightmare staying the same. And then, to top it off, a bunch of dumb jocks stumbled into the street, drunk and laughing like idiots. I yelled at them to get out of the way, but they just flipped me off and vanished into the darkness. My phone rang again. Larkin's voice, sneering through the static. You think this is a game? You've been part of this city's shadow for longer than you know. I sped up, trying to outrun the madness, but deep down, I knew it was over. There was no escape. The city had swallowed me whole, trapped me in this eternal night. And as the shadows closed in around me, I realized one thing. I'd been dead for years, and there was no getting out. This was my last ride. Entry 2. I was standing by my truck, leaning against the cab, just staring at the empty streets, trying to shake that feeling off. Something felt off that night. Couldn't put my finger on it, but it was there, gnawing at me. Still, I was too tired to give a damn. Took a swig from my bottle of cheap whiskey, felt that familiar burn slide down my throat, and figured, whatever, it's just another night. And then Laura showed up. I didn't know her, not at first, but she came out of nowhere, breathless, wide-eyed like she'd just seen something that froze her soul. She didn't say anything fancy, no explanations, just one word, drive. Normally I'm not the type to get involved in other people's messes, but there was something about the look in her eyes. It was familiar, like she'd seen some things you can't unsee, and for some reason that got to me. So I did what she asked. I started the truck and we peeled out into the night. It didn't take long for her to start checking the mirrors, over and over, like she was expecting someone to be there. She kept muttering that we were being followed, her voice barely above a whisper. I rolled my eyes at first. Figured she was just another runaway, someone trying to escape whatever mess they got themselves into. But then, I don't know, my gut started twisting, like something about this wasn't right. I glanced in the rearview mirror, expecting nothing, but there he was, a man in a long coat just sitting in the back seat. My heart damn near stopped. I whipped around, but no one was there. Laura didn't even flinch. She just looked at me, deadpan, and said, "You saw him too." I didn't want to admit it, but yeah, I saw him. It wasn't my imagination. That's when she told me the whole story, or at least enough of it to make my skin crawl. This guy, this thing, had been following her for weeks. Never said a word, never made a move, just watched. And for some reason, the idea of being watched like that, of someone knowing where you are every second, it made the hair on my neck stand up. But I played it cool. I'd seen some crazy stuff in my time, so I wasn't about to let a ghost story get to me. Or at least that's what I told myself. The streets were dead, just the flicker of broken streetlights and the occasional junkie wandering around like a zombie. I hated this city. Used to be a cop here, back before everything went to hell. But that's a story for another time. Right now, all I cared about was getting away from whatever the hell was out there. But no matter how fast I drove, that man in the coat, he was always there, gliding along the sidewalk, never running, just keeping up with us like it was nothing. Laura started whispering again, saying he wasn't after her, that he wanted her to disappear. That's when I laughed. It was stupid, but I laughed because it was the only thing keeping me from losing it. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. This wasn't just another night, and she wasn't just another runaway. My phone buzzed, a call from my ex. I ignored it. Didn't have time for that. Maybe this was karma, some kind of payback for all the things I'd done, for all the people I'd let down. But I pushed that thought away. I had to focus on the road. We hit a red light, and sure enough, there he was again. Laura screamed at me to keep driving, but the truck stalled. My breath caught in my throat as the man stepped closer, his face hidden under that damn hat. I reached for my old police-issued gun in the glove compartment. My hands were shaking, but I managed to pull it out. Laura was crying, saying it was too late, but I didn't want to hear it. I wasn't about to let some ghost or whatever the hell this was get the best of me. The truck roared to life and we took off again, but I couldn't shake the feeling that no matter how far we drove, we weren't getting away. I tried to distract myself, ranting about everything I saw. The flickering lights, the dead-eyed junkies, this rotten city. This place used to be something, but now it was just a graveyard, a place where dreams came to die. I guess I was just trying to keep myself from thinking about the man in the coat. And then I saw him again, standing at the next intersection. I didn't even slow down this time, just plowed right through, but he didn't move, didn't flinch, like he knew something I didn't. Traffic brought us to a stop again, and there he was, closer than ever. Laura said something that chilled me to the bone. "He's here for you, Mike." That's when I snapped. I yelled at her, accused her of setting me up. I didn't want to believe any of this. It was easier to think she was crazy, that this was all some sick joke, but she just looked at me with pity, like I was the one who didn't get it. We hit a dead end, nowhere left to go. The man in the coat was there, just watching. Laura whispered, "It's over." I wasn't about to let it end like that. I got out of the truck, gun in hand, ready to end this nightmare. But then it happened. The man raised his hand, and I froze. Couldn't move, couldn't speak. All I could do was watch as he walked closer. Laura stepped out too, like she knew this was coming. She didn't flinch. I wanted to scream, wanted to stop her, but I couldn't. The man finally spoke, his voice like a memory I'd been trying to forget. "This isn't about her, Mike. It's about you." And then it all came flooding back. The corruption, the people I'd hurt, the lives I'd destroyed. This man, he wasn't a stranger. He was part of me, part of everything I'd tried to bury. Laura looked at me, sad but resigned. "You can't run from it anymore," she said. I watched as my body started to dissolve, like smoke. I was disappearing just like the people I'd left behind. The man in the coat touched my forehead, and suddenly I was back in the precinct, surrounded by the cops who'd all been in on the scandal. Blood on my hands. Blood I couldn't wash away, no matter how hard I tried. The guilt was suffocating. Faces in the rearview mirror, staring back at me with hollow eyes. I was drowning in it, begging for forgiveness. But there was none to be had. Just when I thought it was over, Laura spoke again. "There's another way," she said. "You can make it right." I was back in the truck, whole again, but I knew nothing had changed. The man in the coat was still there, watching. Laura explained that the only way out was to confess, to face what I'd done. And in that moment, I knew she was right. I dropped to my knees, spilling everything, the lies, the cover-ups, all of it. And for the first time in a long time, I felt lighter. The man in the coat stepped back, his face finally visible. It was my face, a twisted version of me, a manifestation of my guilt. I screamed, realizing that I'd been running for myself all along. When it was over, the man faded away, leaving only a shadow. But I knew I'd never truly escape. The guilt would always be there, haunting me like a shadow I couldn't outrun. We drove off into the night, but something had changed. I kept checking the mirrors, expecting to see him again. And maybe I would.